hello there. I was just making some ground beef. I was going to make some nachos for dinner tonight. But I guess while I'm doing this, I have a second to read to you guys quick. So, welcome back to another episode of Hamilton Reads. I'm your host, Mr. Hamilton. And today we're going to read chapters 9 and chapter 10 of Fantastic Mr. Fox. And while we do that, I'm going to be multitasking here, trying to make sure that I don't burn anything. And I'm taking good care of my ground beef here on the stove before I have to put it in the oven. So I'm going to turn this back a little bit. And we'll keep it going. So for my nachos tonight, I'm actually going to use Tostitos Scoops. Maybe you've heard of them before. Tostitos Scoops. I've got some grated cheddar cheese. I've also got some salsa and some queso, which I think I'm going to put in the microwave before I drizzle it on my nachos. And then my ground beef here, which is right there, as you can see. So my ground beef's going to continue to cook. While my ground beef's cooking, I'll go ahead and start to read, and then maybe as I get done the first chapter, maybe I'll take a break and put the nachos in the oven depending on when the beef's done. So let me quickly grab some spices to throw on the ground beef so it doesn't taste too dull and it has some flavor with it, and then I'll get to our book, okay? So let's get down here in the cabinet. Salt, pepper, and then something I like to use that I'm sure a lot of people at home have, I think it's pretty popular anyway. This is a little trick here. It's called adobo, and it's kind of seasoning. It's an all-purpose seasoning. It's got pictures of cheeseburger, turkey, steak, fish. It's good for everything. It's got salt, garlic, and pepper, and turmeric. So it's got like kind of a little bit of everything. It's good seasoning. So I'll put some of this on my ground beef quickly. Over this. And put the cap back on there. And then I really like black pepper. So I like putting a lot of black pepper in pretty much everything I cook, but especially meats when I make meats. So there we go. So we'll stir that up quick. We'll let that finish cooking while I read chapter 9. And then maybe we'll take a break before we read chapter 10 so I can get this in the oven. Okay, so chapter 9 of Fantastic Mr. Fox is called Mr. Fox Has a Plan. For 3 days and 3 nights, this waiting game went on. How long can a fox go without food or water? Bogus asked on the 3rd day. Well, not much longer now, Bean told him. He'll make a run for it soon, he'll have to. And Bean was right. Down in the tunnel, the foxes were slowly but surely starving to death. If only we should have just put a tiny sip of water, said one of the small foxes. Oh, Dad, can't you do something? Couldn't we make a dash for it, Dad? We'd have a little bit of a chance, wouldn't we? No chance at all, snapped Mrs. Fox. I refuse to let you go up there and face those guns. I'd sooner you stay down here and die in peace. Mr. Fox had not spoken for a long time. He'd been sitting quite still, his eyes closed, not even hearing what the others were saying. Mrs. Fox knew that he was trying desperately to think of a way out. And now, as she looked at him, she saw him stir himself and get slowly to his feet. He looked back at his wife. There was a little spark of excitement dancing in his eyes. What is it, darling? Said Mrs. Fox quickly. I've just had a bit of an idea, Mr. Fox said carefully. What? They cried. Oh, Dad, what is it? Well, come on, said Mrs. Fox. Tell us quickly. Well, Mr. Fox said. Then he stopped and sighed and sadly shook his head. He sat down again. No, it's no good, he said. It won't work after all. Why not, Dad? Well, because it means more digging. And we aren't any And we aren't any of us strong enough for that after 3 days and nights without food. Oh, yes, we are, Dad, cried the foxes, jumping up and running to their father. We can do it. You see if we can't, so can you. Mr. Fox looked at the small foxes, then he smiled. What fine children I have, he thought. They're starving to death, and they haven't had a drink for 3 days, and they're still undefeated. I must not let them down. Marvin, what are you doing, man? Marvin just picked up a stuffed animal. That's not his. This is not his. So I'm going to go put this away quickly. Hold on. Come on, Marvin. Have more respect than that. That's someone's stuffed animal, man. Ooh. My Adobe got everywhere too, or Adobo. Well, I suppose we could give it a try, he said. Well, let's go, Dad. Tell us what you want us to do. Slowly, Mrs. Fox got to her feet. She was suffering more than any of them from the lack of food and water. She was very weak. I'm so sorry, she said, but I don't think I'm going to be much help. You stay right where you are, my darling, said Mr. Fox. We can handle this by ourselves. So I'm going to set the book down very quickly just so I can tend to the food here. So what I'm going to do is my ground beef is all but done cooking, pretty much. My oven is already preheated to 400 degrees. And I've got my little tray here that I put tinfoil over just so that I have kind of an easy cleanup afterwards. So I'll set that there. And I'm going to go ahead and actually put my queso in the microwave really quickly. Hopefully it's like nice and runny then so that I can pour it over top of the cheese. Or over top of the, over top of the chips and nachos and all that good stuff. So there's that. I'll get my scoops out. Right here. And I'll just do a little bit of that. So today I was on a conference call, a Zoom call, with my coworkers that work at North Hills Elementary School, and one of them, her name's Miss DeLong, she really enjoys salads, and you can tell her this is my version of a salad. It's a nacho salad, and I don't care what she says. Alright. So, my queso seems to be good to go. My beef seems to be good to go. See how my beef is now like brown all the way through? There's no red spots like earlier. That's how you know when beef is generally cooked. There's just no red spots. You gotta cook it the whole way through, especially ground beef. Some people like their steaks a little red, but ground beef you don't mess with at all. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and just drizzle this on over top. This might be like a full pound of ground beef. It's crazy. This is quite the healthy meal. A little sarcasm if you couldn't notice. Alright, plenty of ground beef. Good. That feels good. I'll turn off the oven there. Put that back there. Now my cheese, my grated cheese. And we're really just putting it in the oven to melt the cheese. There's really no reason to put it in the oven. And in fact, the ground beef's probably hot enough to melt the cheese as is, but I really just enjoy the melted cheese. So I'm gonna dump actually a whole bag of this cheese on my nachos because I enjoy super cheesy nachos. So there's that. I'll set the trash there for now. And then my queso. Ooh. I'm just gonna drizzle my queso. That looks great. Put this back in the fridge. Save some queso for later. And so the last thing I'm gonna do is put my salsa on, but I'm actually gonna put my salsa on it first. Hopefully you guys can see all this. I don't know if there's a real glare, but lots of queso, lots of cheese, ground beef going in the oven. So the oven's set, like I said, for 400. We'll put that in there while we read chapter 10, and then I'll pull it out and show it to you guys with the finished product after I put some sauce on. So chapter 10 is called Boggis's Chicken House number 1. This time we must go in a very special direction, said Mr. Fox. So he and his 4 children started to dig it once again. The work went much slowly now, much more slowly. Yet they kept at it with great courage, and little by little the tunnel began to grow. Dad, I wish you would tell us where we're going, said one of the children. Well, I dare not do that, said Mr. Fox, because this place I'm hoping to get to is so marvelous that if I described it to you now, you would go crazy with excitement. And then if we failed to get there, which is very possible, you would die of disappointment. And I don't want to raise your hopes too much, my darlings. For a long time they kept on digging. For how long they didn't know, because there were no days and no nights down there in the murky tunnel. But at last Mr. Fox gave the order to stop. I think, he said, we'd better take a peep upstairs now and see where we are. I know where I want to be, but I can't possibly be sure we're anywhere near it. Slowly, warily, the foxes began to slope the tunnel up towards the surface. Up and up it went until suddenly they came to something hard above their heads, and they couldn't go up any further. Mr. Fox reached up to examine this hard thing. Oh, it's wood, he whispered. Wooden planks. Well, what does that mean, Dad? Well, it means, unless I'm very much mistaken, that we are right underneath somebody's house, whispered Mr. Fox. But very quiet now while I take a peek. Carefully, Mr. Fox began pushing up one of the floorboards. The board creaked most terribly, and they all ducked down, waiting for something awful to happen. Nothing did. So Mr. Fox pushed up a second board, and then very, very cautiously he poked his head up through the gap. He let out a shriek of excitement. So here, over on this side, is Mr. Fox peeking up through the floorboards, and on this side is Mr. Fox and his 4 little fox puppies digging through the tunnel, sloping upwards to where then they found the floorboards at the base of somebody's house. I've done it, he yelled. I've done it first time. I've done it. I've done it. He pulled himself up through the gap in the floor and started prancing and dancing with joy. Come on up, he sang out. Come up and see where you are, my darlings. What a sight for a hungry fox. Hallelujah, hooray, hooray. The 4 small foxes scrambled up out of the tunnel, and what a fantastic sight it was that now met their eyes. They were in a huge shed, and the whole place was teeming with chickens. There were white chickens and brown chickens and black chickens by the thousand. Boggis's Chicken House number 1, cried Mr. Fox. It's exactly what I was aiming at. I hit it slap in the middle, first time. Isn't that fantastic? And if I may say so myself, rather clever. The small foxes went wild with excitement. They started running around in all directions, chasing the stupid chickens. Wait, ordered Mr. Fox. Don't lose your heads. Stand back, calm down. Let's do this properly. First of all, everyone have a drink of water. They all ran over to the chicken's drinking trough and lapped up the lovely, cool water. Then Mr. Fox chose 3 of the plumpest hens, and with a clever flick of his jaws, he killed them instantly. Here's a picture of Mr. Fox peeking up and finding all those chickens in Boggis's hen house number 1. Back to the tunnel, he ordered. Come on. No fooling around. The quicker you move, the quicker you shall have something to eat. One after another, they climbed down through the hole in the floor, and soon they were all standing once again in the dark tunnel. Mr. Fox reached up and pulled the floorboards back into place. He did this with great care. He did it so that no one could tell they had ever been moved. Ah, my son, he said, giving the 3 plump hens to the biggest of his 4 small children. Run back with these to your mother. Tell her to prepare a feast. Tell her the rest of us will be along in a jiffy, as soon as we've made a few other little arrangements. That's the end of the chapter. That's where we're going to stop today, and that's where we're going to pick up tomorrow on Tuesday, May 12th, I believe. I think today's Monday, May 11th. Actually, I'm quite certain today's Monday, May 11th. So we'll pick up tomorrow Tuesday, May 12th on chapters 11 and chapter 12 of Fantastic Mr. Fox. So I'll set this down, and I'm going to grab an oven mitt somewhere because I do not want to burn my hands. So here's my little oven mitt. It says, let's eat your feelings too. So I'm going to eat my feelings today, apparently. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It looks so good. So here's what we're working with so far. Ooh, yummy, 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 yummy. Looks great. So, as I said, I'm just going to set this right here. And then I'm going to pour over a little bit of the salsa. Actually, instead of pouring, I'll just use my little spoon here so that I don't use too much. A little salsa here, a little salsa there. And then another important thing, especially for everybody who's young at home, I'm not encouraging anybody at home to use their oven or stove. Make sure that you get permission from your parents, or don't do it without parent permission. But I will tell you that when you do have the go-ahead from your parents to use the oven, it's always very important to make sure that you remember to turn the oven off. Because if you don't turn it off, your oven's going to stay on. You're going to waste power, and then also it's a fire hazard. So, anyway, that sauce is pretty good. All right. So, here is my finished product. A big old heaping pile of nachos with ground beef, cheddar cheese, spicy queso, and mild salsa. So I'll set this down, and then here in a second I bet my girlfriend Summer will probably be out because she loves nachos. So I bet she can smell it. She's probably gonna come out here any second. So anyway, without further ado, we're gonna get to our sock segment, our sock and shirt segment. Today I'm not really wearing a special shirt. It's just a normal green polo shirt, but I am wearing some special socks. Socks I've showed before on another episode, but I'll show them again because they're very special and I think they're very, very funny. So these are my UFO socks of ducking a cow, which is pretty cool. Looks like the cow's in a regular green field or whatever. Or anyway, he's about to get abducted into a crazy, crazy spaceship. So we did our sock segment, our sock and shirt segment. We did a little cooking today on Hamilton Reads, and now we're going to conclude with some shout-outs. So first and foremost, number one, being that it's Monday, May 11th, it is the day after Mother's Day, so I would just really like to shout out again to all the amazing mothers out there who are very selfless and do everything in their power to make sure that their children are taken care of. I am very blessed that my mom is as loving and caring and compassionate and understanding as she is. So shout out to not only my mom, but all the mothers in the world who are great at what they do. So shout out to the moms. I would like to also shout out to Tostitos Scoops. Tostitos Scoops providing perfect scoops for my snack today. I'll actually try one. I like the scoops because quite literally you can get a full scoop. Look at that. Oh, look at that. It's got some queso, some salsa, some ground beef, all in one bite. Oh, oh wow. That's good. So shout out to moms, shout out to Tostitos Scoops, and also shout out to Rudders, because I actually was able to get all of my supplies to make my nachos aside from my ground beef, which I got at Target. So shout out to Rudders and Target for being the places in which I was able to go to get all that good stuff. I love Target. Big fan of Target. Anyway, that concludes another episode of Hamilton Reads. Thank you so much for stopping by. It looks like Marvin wanted to say hi to you guys as well. Thanks for stopping by. And make sure that you guys check back tomorrow, Tuesday, May 12th, for another episode of Hamilton Reads, in which we are going to tackle chapters 11 and 12 of Fantastic Mr. Fox. Bye.